I'm not sure I deserve all the nice things said about me tonight, but I've got arthritis, and I don't deserve that either. What do you say at a crowd like this? I don't know. That's been my biggest problem. So I asked a couple of my Naval Academy classmates, and they said, they won't remember it anyway. You didn't remember anything they said every Wednesday night at our enrichment series, did you? I said, yes. One thing I did remember. A naval officer stood up and he said, remember this, gentlemen, keep shoe trees in your shoes, it pays dividends. That's the only thing I remember from when all of you. So I decided, and they said, just tell them some sea stories. So I still wasn't satisfied, and even last night I got here and I said, well, I'll look in the Gideon Bible for some inspiration. I turned to the front of the Gideon Bible and it said this: are you discouraged? Read Matthew's 5th chapter, 11th and 12th verses. Are you weary? Read 1 Corinthians 15th chapter, 58th verse. Are you lonely? Read the 23rd Psalm. Somebody written under there in pencil. Are you still lonely? Call 389-6472. When I got to the Naval Academy in 1941, World War II hadn't started. I was a draft dodger. I knew it was coming. And I heard about the great wrestler we had had. Now, this is a sea story. And his name was Tex Edwards. And he had been in the 1928 Olympics in Amsterdam, and he got 4th place because he was pinned twice on rolling falls. He didn't even know that was a fall. If you don't believe they did this, ask Dan Hotz. He knows it just like I do. We didn't even know the rules when we went. So he had also pinned my coach, Ray Schwartz, in the Olympic trials. The next thing I remember at the Naval Academy, October the 30th, 1941, World War still hadn't started. You remember the first ship sunk in World War II? You'll know, some of you remember when I tell you. It was the USS Reuben James, and there was a song written about Reuben James later. Guess who the commanding officer was? Tex Edwards. He went down with the ship. And of about 150 men and 10 or 12 officers, they picked up 44 men, none of the officers. That was one of the sea stories. So my school has a tremendous legacy of wrestling. My first year as a plebe, you know what a plebe is, the lowest of the low. You have to march down the middle of this corridor, the Naval Academy, or West Point, and you square all the corners. And when the upperclassmen come back at the end of the summer, where they've been on leave or on ships for training, they give you a really hard time, believe me. And the typical thing was you're walking down the middle of the hall, and the upperclassman sees you. Oh boy, new class coming in. Detail halt. Sound off, mister. Midshipman Henson, 4th class, sir. Where are you from, Mr. Henson? Oklahoma, sir. Guess what the next question was? Invariably, are you a wrestler? And an entirely different attitude. Instead of a threatening attitude, it was a hopeful attitude. Why? Because in 1938 or 39, somebody correct me on that, Oklahoma A&M team in a ragtag yellow school bus went all through a trap back east, and they wrestled at the Naval Academy, Lehigh, Penn State, West Virginia, Syracuse, before they came back to Oklahoma. Now, Navy was used to being one of the big guys in the East. Navy, Lehigh, and Penn State were always the top. Well, they wrestled. They lost 33-3 that night at the Naval Academy. Later that summer, the plebes were called together each state, so you'd know your other guys from your state. About 10 or 12 Oklahoma guys in there, and some of them were saying, and they're letting their hair down because now they can talk to their peers. I said, what the hell happens? Every time I sound off and I say from Oklahoma, they say, are you a wrestler? I had to explain it to them. And I knew why, because in 1938 or 9, Oklahoma State had gone back east and wrestled those teams I'm talking about, and all these guys had seen Navy creamed by Oklahoma State. And at that time, we probably only had 25 or 30 schools in the state that wrestled. It wasn't like Pennsylvania had 800, well, also great wrestling. But I explained to them, and I said, well, you know, those guys just came and they clobbered us. And all those upperclassmen remembered that just a year or two before. Well, actually, the 4 members of that team that are here tonight. Joe McDaniels, 3-time NCAA champion. My brother Stanley Henson, 3-time NCAA champion. George Chiga, Johnny Harrell. Johnny Harrell from was the mayor of Ardmore also. He came to the Naval Academy later himself, and he was an upperclassman when I was there. So I could tell you some more sea stories, but I don't think we really have the time. I want to thank a few people who've been very instrumental in me being here. Not only my wife. I was over 30 when I wrestled on the Olympic team because of World War II, and a lot of other people were too. They've been older than me wrestled on the Olympic team. But I had 3 little kids. I'd come home completely pooped out. My wife would have fed the kids, put them to bed, never sleep, cook something for me, come in. I was asleep because I was so pooped out and tired. Well, she did that for 3 or 4 years while I was also teaching at the Naval Academy. So any wife of anybody who has a family that makes the Olympic team, the wife deserves a lot of credit. That's my wife, Gloria. I also like to thank my brother Stanley, my wife Gloria, Jeff and Josh, my sons who you just saw up here, and my daughter Valerie, here with them. Other people who were very instrumental in me standing up here tonight, Art Martori, Don Sayanga, who's not here, he's speaking at his own 51st reunion tonight in Pennsylvania. And my teammates, several teammates I've had. Henry Wittenberg, who wrote me a nice letter. Don, what's your name? Hodge, right? So, Alan Rice, and many others, too numerous to mention here tonight. My other son, John Purnell, who runs the Brute Wrestling Company. So I want to only remember, if you remember, 2 things tonight. One, how appreciative I am for this honor and for being here. And 2, always keep shoe trees in your shoes. It pays dividends. So, thank you.